The dropship descended through the smoke-choked skies of Kale Prime, its hull streaked with soot and static discharge. Inside, 12 human medics sat in silence, strapped into crash harnesses, faces unreadable behind visors streaked with grime. They made no small talk, no nervous chatter. Just the low hum of engines, the clipped voice of their commander relaying field instructions, and the distant rattle of surface-to-air gunfire. To the outside observer, they looked like soldiers, too disciplined, too composed for volunteers. But the insignia on their shoulders told another story. The Crimson Cross of Earth's Medical Vanguard Corps. To the Galactic Empire, they were supposed to be neutral aid workers, authorized by treaty to provide non-combatant medical assistance. But neutrality had always been a paper-thin shield in a galaxy built on suspicion. As the hatch dropped, smoke and ruin greeted them. Alien ruins twisted toward the sky like broken fingers, their ornate towers shattered by orbital barrages. Kale Prime had once been a cultural jewel of the Dravari Dominion, but now it was just another battleground in a war no one could seem to win. The medics deployed wordlessly, moving with eerie coordination. Their leader, Commander Isla, gave hand signals instead of words. Her face, streaked with soot and blood from a prior evac on Yothel, betrayed nothing of the storm inside her. The convoy of injured civilians already waited near the crash site, bleeding, broken, some dying. A Dravari colonel stepped forward to greet her, his armor scorched and his posture tense. He looked the women over, blinking in confusion. "We expected surgeons, not whatever this is." Isla's eyes flicked over him once. "You got surgeons. We just brought our own security protocols." Before the colonel could reply, Isla was kneeling beside a burned child, issuing rapid orders. The other women scattered, administering care with startling speed. They moved like battlefield ghosts, stitching wounds, stabilizing vitals, injecting coagulants while scanning for hostile signatures. Not one carried a sidearm. Not openly. The colonel watched them work, a sneer forming. "You humans take everything too seriously. You think your medics need combat armor." Isla didn't look up. "You think we don't?" Their mission wasn't to fight, but Earth had learned the hard way. After the massacre of Sand Hollow and the betrayal at Koritha's Gate, no Earthborn medic walked into a conflict zone unprepared. These women were field doctors, yes, but also trained marksmen, infiltration specialists, counterintelligence analysts. The Red Cross was their oath. What lay underneath was the contingency Earth had never officially declared. After 6 hours, the team had treated 93 wounded across 3 city sectors. Not a single casualty was lost on their watch. The Dravari whispered among themselves. These humans didn't just save lives, they predicted incoming fire, relocated patients minutes before airstrikes, and moved through debris like they'd trained on this world for years. One Dravari officer, trying to be discreet, noted how many pressure points the medics pressed were kill spots. Commander Isla read the report quietly, eyes narrowing. She didn't need to ask how it got out. The Empire had spies in every medical fleet. That night, the team set up a makeshift trauma center in a bombed-out cathedral. Pillars still smoldered. The mosaic of the Dravari peace god had been shattered into ash. A young human, Lieutenant Cade, stitched a patient in silence, her hands steady even as explosions thudded in the distance. She was the youngest in the unit, barely 23, and still believed in the original mission. Still thought they were here just to help. Dr. Ria Voss, the team's trauma specialist, joined her without a word, inspecting her work. "Good technique," she muttered. "Better than some ER docs back home." Cade gave a wan smile. "He might still lose the arm." "Doesn't matter. He'll live. You did your job." Across the city, Imperial troops monitored human activities through surveillance drones. The Red Cross was an easy visual. The assumption was simple. Non-combatants were soft targets. But as they reviewed footage, their analysts began to flag strange patterns. No chatter over open comms. No emotional reactions. Perfect formations, even in chaos. No recorded injuries on the medic side, despite multiple skirmishes. One drone caught a medic preemptively repositioning a triage unit minutes before an orbital strike, without warning, without access to Imperial data. High Command dismissed it as coincidence. But Commander Torsin, a grizzled war veteran of the Empire's Praetorian Guard, watched the recordings 3 times in silence. He saw more than tactics. He saw precision, something that couldn't be taught in a medical academy. He submitted a formal inquiry. It was buried in bureaucracy within hours. The next morning, a supply convoy headed for the medics was rerouted. The locals were told it had been delayed due to rebel interference. In truth, it had been redirected by order of the regional prefect, who had grown tired of the humans' growing influence. The prefect wanted to remind Earth who held power in the quadrant. That night, the convoy was attacked. No distress call was sent. By the time backup arrived, the transport had been reduced to burning slag. No survivors, except the humans hadn't been on board. They changed their route hours earlier, without explanation. A squad of medics walked calmly into the smoldering wreckage. No emotion, no commentary. They extracted the black box, retrieved every human dog tag, and recovered 1 surviving data crystal. They handed nothing over to the Empire. That same night, a reconnaissance drone belonging to the prefect's private guard exploded mid-flight over Kale Prime's southern sector. The Empire claimed it was sabotage. They never found the culprit. In the days that followed, Alien Command grew increasingly suspicious. Satellite arrays picked up movement patterns that didn't align with standard medical behavior. 4 medics entered a collapsed bunker to assist survivors. Only 2 came out. The others, it turned out, had remained behind not because they were dead, but because they'd found an unmarked weapon stockpile. The stockpile detonated 48 hours later. No human signatures were detected on site. The prefect demanded answers. Isla gave none. Cade confronted her in private, her voice low but intense. "We're not just here to heal, are we?" Isla regarded her steadily. "We're here to protect life. Sometimes that means neutralizing threats." "You mean killing?" "I mean ending what would kill others. That's what we were trained for. You think Earth sent us just to bandage wounds?" "We are," Isla said. "That's why we don't start wars. But we sure as hell finish them." On the 7th day, a field hospital came under sudden artillery fire. All evidence suggested an inside job. Imperial patterns. False flag tactics. 27 civilians died instantly. 3 human medics were caught in the blast. Dr. Rhea pulled one out with her bare hands, digging through the rubble while gunfire rained overhead. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just kept working, even after the evac ships refused to land. That night, the medics changed uniforms. The Red Cross remained, but the white undersuits were replaced with reinforced black fiber mesh, impervious to standard pulse rounds. Their gloves were upgraded, comms encrypted, drones launched, unmarked silent, invisible to alien radar. When the Imperial Command reviewed the first battlefield recordings, they dismissed them as anomalies. A few medics defending themselves with repurposed rifles? It was expected. The Red Crescent, Red Shield, or whatever the humans called their frontline support crews. They weren't supposed to be combatants, but in war, chaos always blurred lines. But when full divisions reported being stalled or turned back by these same units, and one of the Empire's high-ranking strategists demanded to know what kind of weapons these doctors were carrying, concern metastasized into alarm. In orbit, aboard the Imperial Dreadnought Action, Admiral Cover stood with his mandibles clenched. 3 of his eye stalks focused on separate holoscreens displaying thermal combat overlays. The enemy units didn't retreat. They advanced. Human medics, clearly marked in white with red crosses or plus signs, moved across the battlefield in perfect formation. They didn't fire indiscriminately. Every shot was a kill. Every movement was cover to cover. It was as if they'd skipped the usual training curve and emerged fully formed from the pages of an elite combat doctrine. "Why are the non-combatants killing our shock troops?" Cover hissed to his war analysts. The analysts had no answer. The archive simulations predicted medic units were a soft underbelly, vulnerable, demoralizing to lose, but tactically insignificant. These simulations didn't account for humans. The Empire had fought thousands of species and never encountered a civilization that armed its healers with such fury, such clinical precision. On the ground, Lieutenant Mara Jensen moved with her unit through the ruins of Zorak 7's capital sector. Burnt-out plasma scars seared the stone facades of once majestic towers. Civilians were gone. The Empire had removed them long before the war began. Only soldiers remained, hidden behind composite barriers, deploying drones, setting traps. Mara didn't need to see them to know they were afraid. The lack of response confirmed it. She adjusted her headset, tuned in the squad channel, and flicked her safety off. Medic Squad Theta is pushing grid sector C2, she said. Rules of engagement hold. Non-lethal unless they fire first. Then make it permanent. Copy that, Sergeant Rico responded, his voice as calm as if he were reporting inventory status. The irony never left her. Officially, they were medics. Every battlefield authority had to classify them as such. Their uniforms bore the cross. Their ranks were marked with insignia for triage, trauma, and rescue. But the human military had discovered something fundamental that no empire, no alliance, no council of war-minded species ever grasped. The best defense isn't overwhelming firepower. It's underestimated fury. And nothing was more underestimated than a medic. The enemy hesitated. They always did. It was the last mistake they ever made. They advanced through a corridor lined with collapsed scaffolding, a remnant of a once towering archive center. A soft ping echoed in Mara's ear. Motion. 4 hostiles. 2 drones. Heat signatures matched standard Empire scout loadouts, low armor, high speed, average aim. She waved 2 fingers to her left. Nia moved like a shadow, mounted her pulse rifle on a debris pile, and sighted in. 1 second. 2. The moment the scouts appeared cautious but slow, Nia fired once, twice. Headshots. Their helmets didn't matter. Targets down, Nia said. Drones. Mara asked. Auto-acquired. EMP nets deployed. The buzzing stopped. Mara exhaled, letting the adrenaline bleed off. They weren't here to annihilate cities or destroy infrastructure. They were here to humiliate an empire. Not through cruelty, not through terror, but by revealing the truth. Humanity would not be bound by anyone's rules, not even the unspoken ones that said medics don't kill. Farther north, Commander Varel of the Empire's 18th Assault Legion growled through his rebreather. They're ghosts. We set traps, they dismantle them. We ambush, they're already behind us. They don't jam comms, but they always know where we are. He slammed a clawed fist into the console, denting it. This is not warfare. This is humiliation. A junior officer hesitated, eyes wide. Sir, permission to speak freely? Varel snarled but nodded. We think they're using predictive models. Human medics don't follow any formal doctrine we can recognize. But their behavior's not random. It's algorithmic, adaptive. You're telling me we're losing to doctors with code? Varel hissed. The officer hesitated again. Not just doctors, sir. Combat medics. Hybrid trained. Some of them have more field time than our officers. They don't carry heavy armor because they move too fast to be hit. They don't carry heavy weapons because they don't need them. And they train for one specific goal, survival, no matter the odds. That makes them lethal. Varel said nothing for a moment. Then he issued an order to retreat from the forward districts and regroup at the central fortress. If the enemy wanted to play games, they would do so on his terms. In the ruins, Mara saw the shift. The Empire had fallen back. Her HUD confirmed it. That meant one thing. They were fortifying, planning a decisive strike, or baiting a trap. New objective, she called to her team. We don't follow. We pivot. Begin triage extractions. Civilian records say there are injured captives in the sublevels. Understood, came the reply. Not everything about war was killing. They were still medics. Still human. But they weren't naive. They knew that rescue missions turned into firefights. That Imperial Guards didn't ask questions. They shot first. So the squad moved fast, breaching a maintenance tunnel, descending through dust-choked shafts and echoing metal chambers. In the gloom, they found them. 10 beings. Starved. Shackled. Most weren't even human. Zorakians, Velthrim. One even looked like a Relaxi trader. The Empire had no respect for non-combatants. Nia cut the restraints, while Rico scanned for signs of infection. One of the prisoners tried to speak, but choked on dried blood. Mara handed over a hydration pack and kept her rifle aimed at the only entrance. Her heartbeat slowed. Not from calm, but calculation. She knew what would happen next. The Empire wouldn't let them go easily. And she was right. They came through the entrance, 3 elites, armored in carbon ceramic, carrying plasma rifles and energy shields. The Empire's best. Mara moved before they even spoke. Her shot hit the lead elite's visor, blinding him. Nia lobbed a concussion charge. Rico flanked and delivered a clean headshot from 10 meters. It was done in 6 seconds. The prisoners were speechless. "Why?" one of them asked. "You could have left us." Mara didn't blink. "Because that's what they expect. And we don't do what they expect." Back at the Imperial Fortress, Admiral Cover raged at the growing data streams. He reviewed every frame. Human medics storming through secured zones, rescuing prisoners, healing wounded, then returning to the front line to dismantle entire platoons with nothing but rifles and grit. "They're not soldiers," Cover said. "They're insurgents." But even he knew that was a lie. They weren't rogue units. They weren't disobedient. They followed orders. Their chain of command was intact. Humanity had simply stopped pretending that care and combat were separate. The Red Cross no longer meant surrender. It meant defiance. They thought they could contain them, that the so-called medics from Earth would fold when pressed. After all, humans had arrived under the banner of peace and restoration, their purpose allegedly to assist and heal the wounded. The Galactic Empire had drafted them into the neutral zones, offering them roles far from the front lines. That was the arrangement. That was the mistake. By the time Commandant Yexel received the emergency broadcast from Sector 11, it was already too late. He watched the replay, static-filled, jittery footage from the helmet cam of a Zorarathi soldier. It showed fire, ruin, and Red Cross uniforms moving with surgical precision through a burned-out city block. Only, the medics weren't evacuating the injured. They were eliminating resistance. The camera jerked and spun. A figure stepped in a frame, a human woman, face smeared with soot and blood, cradling an injured Imperial officer. Her lips moved. The translator flickered. Then, he was aiming for my friend. Her voice was low, detached, calm. So I removed the threat. Yexel's mandibles clicked involuntarily as he turned to his adjutant. "How many of these healers were deployed?" 312, sir, the aide replied, across 9 sectors. The commandant's frill stiffened. "And how many are now accounted for?" The adjutant hesitated. "Unknown, sir. Communications with 4 sectors have gone dark." Yexel didn't swear. Not in front of subordinates. But his claws tightened into the armrest of his command chair. The humans had been underestimated, not in strength. They were soft-skinned, barely armored, but in resolve, in cunning, in their capacity to turn disadvantage into dominance. Down on Corella 4, Subcommander Enrix's division had been wiped out in less than a day. Surveillance footage showed a medic center set up in the ruins of a collapsed administration dome. Civilians had been brought in for care. Soldiers were told it was safe. They walked into Tria. None walked out. What happened next became classified under Level 9 clearance, but the whispers traveled faster than sensors could suppress them. That the medics had coordinated surgical strikes against field leaders. That they used trauma centers to lure in Imperial officers under false pretenses. That they executed with the same cold logic they applied to battlefield triage: prioritize, neutralize, preserve the rest. The humans didn't gloat, didn't broadcast victories. They simply advanced, one ruined district at a time. On the diplomatic floor of the Imperial Citadel, panic had begun to fester beneath protocol. Ambassadors demanded answers. Who trained these women? Where were their files? Why hadn't the council vetted them more thoroughly? But there were no files. The medics had been recruited from volunteer groups, humanitarian missions, veterans of Earth's endless border conflicts. No centralized database. No unified command. Just silent cohesion, and that made them impossible to predict. One particularly vocal senator from the Hale Dominion demanded retaliation. "Deploy orbital strikes," he barked. "Crush their safe zones. Show these healers what happens to traitors." The chamber grew still. Across the table, Ambassador Saren, a human diplomat in an ill-fitting suit, lifted her eyes. "You think we didn't plan for that?" she asked. The room froze. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. "You bomb our zones, and we leak the footage. All of it. Images of you killing unarmed medics in Red Cross uniforms, executing field doctors, targeting refugee shelters, broadcast across 12 systems in under 10 minutes. You'll lose half your border allies to revolt before the dust settles." No one responded. "We offered aid," she continued. "You turned it into a war zone." Later, in private, Counselor Marin of the Zool Collective cornered her. "This isn't how your people fight," he said. "You use force, yes, but not like this. These medics, these women, what are they?" Saren didn't flinch. "They're what happens when you ask a human to save lives in a system designed to destroy them. They adapt, and then they stop asking." Back on the ground, resistance spread like wildfire. The medics had become a symbol, not of rebellion, not entirely, but of refusal. A refusal to let the Empire dictate the terms of compassion. A refusal to remain passive in the face of cruelty masquerading as order. They moved in squads of 4, silent, methodical. No rank insignias. No broadcasted commands. They fought in tandem, using hand signals and repurposed field drones to disrupt surveillance. A squad in the Beltez ruins reportedly took down an entire artillery post using nothing but surgical tubing, repurposed defibrillators, and a truckload of expired morphine. That story spread. More humans arrived. Not all women this time, but all trained by the same hands. They weren't soldiers. They were medics with trauma scars, battlefield experience, and no faith in the rules of the Empire. Earth didn't officially sanction them, but Earth didn't stop them either. At one outpost, an Imperial lieutenant tried to surrender. She was young, confused, visibly shaking. The human medic took her weapon, nodded, and offered her water. "We don't kill for fun," she said. "We kill when we're not given another choice." The girl cried. The medic sat with her until she stopped. Not all engagements were so clean. The Empire retaliated in sectors they could still control. On Cora Station, 4 medics were captured and executed on live feed. Their names were never released, but their images were broadcast, and every human in the system saw. The next week, 17 supply convoys vanished. 5 barracks exploded. The names of the dead were spelled in white gauze on the walls. For the 4. It wasn't long before the Empire began pulling back. Not out of strategic defeat, but fear of optics. Fear that every engagement might turn into a PR disaster. That their own allies would begin questioning orders. That planets under protection might suddenly decide they didn't want protecting anymore. Within months, the medics were legend. The phrase Red Cross no longer meant aid. It meant retribution. It meant that if you pushed too far, if you hurt the helpless and called it duty, someone was coming. Someone trained to stop the bleeding. And not always yours. A tribunal was eventually convened. The Galactic Council debated whether Earth should be sanctioned. Whether the humans had broken interstellar law. Whether weaponized compassion could be classified as a war crime. Earth responded through a single envoy. His statement was brief. "You asked us to heal. We did. You asked us to stay neutral. We tried. Then you killed our medics. Now we ask, what did you expect?" The tribunal stalled. The woman in the first footage, face bloodied, eyes steady, was never identified. Some said she died in the first wave. Others claimed she still operated, changing identities, leading new squads under different names. They called her the Crimson Cross. Some claimed she was a myth. Others swore she saved their lives. On the outskirts of the Empire's core worlds, graffiti appeared in the ruins. White crosses, smeared in red. Below them, a phrase in Terran Standard. They trained us to heal. You trained us to fight. We mastered both. And somewhere in the void, another dropship launched. Another unit descended. They wore no armor, just marked vests and silent intent. Medics, they still called themselves. But the Empire had learned. This time, they didn't underestimate the women.